Hey everybody! So this is the third episode of our series How to Create a Web Application with DaDaBIK. In the first episode, we have developed a simple sales management application in 25 minutes without any coding. In the second episode, we improved the application using some advanced DaDaBIK features, in particular calculated fields. In this episode, we will focus on another advanced feature, custom functions. We'll see custom validation functions, custom formatting functions, and custom required functions. Okay, let's start with custom validation functions. So, generally speaking, data validation is very important when you build a web application. You should never trust your users because they can make mistakes when they fill your forms. DaDaBIK has several predefined validation rules which depend on the DaDaBIK content type you choose for a field. For example, if you have an email field, automatically DaDaBIK checks if the email is valid when the user enters some values in that field. However, sometimes you might have particular needs that are not covered by the predefined rules provided by DaDaBIK. And in those cases, you can use custom validation function. Okay? So, let's say, for example, that you have a field code product, and the code must have a length of 10 characters, and the first 2 characters must be AB, for example. Of course, we don't have a predefined rule that covers a so specific validation need. So we create a custom validation function. We open customfunctions.php and we write it. This function is called every time a user clicks on save or insert on a form and must return true if the field value is OK or false if it is not. So here is the function I wrote. Let's analyze it together. First of all, what is $parameters are? It's an associative array. In other programming languages, it's called also dictionary, okay? That contains all the values a user entered in a form. If you don't have any programming knowledge, think about it as a box where you can find the values of all the form fields your user wants to submit. For example, $parameters are code product contains the value the user filled in the code product text box. Okay? So the rule here is very simple. If the length, and the PHP function we use is strlen, of code product is 10, and the first 2 characters, and in fact substring code product 02 means the first 2 characters, are AB, then the validation test is passed, return true. In all the other cases, return false. Please note that instead of strlen and substr, it is much better to use 2 functions that DaDaBIK provides called strlen custom and substr custom. I don't want to go into the details here. I write some details in the description of this video. Okay, next thing. We need to tell DaDaBIK the error message to display when the value doesn't pass the validation. To do that, we open the file englishcustom.php, that is for English. Of course, if you need other languages, you have to do it for all the languages you need. If I need the Italian translation, I will create an Italian custom.php file in the folder languages. Maybe you have already created for other purposes, maybe not. And we add this line. Okay, so basically $normal messages are is again an associative array containing many messages DaDaBIK uses in the user interface. And between square brackets, between quotes, you write DaDaBIK validate code product, which is the name of the function we wrote. And then you specify the message. The length of product code must be 10 characters. The code must start with AB. Okay, now we just need to tell DaDaBIK, please use this function to validate the field code product. So, form configurator, code product, custom validation function, let's write here DaDaBIK validate code product. Let's test it. For example, I can try a product code that starts with AA instead of AB, and I get an error. Okay. Let's try with a valid one, and okay, it works. So the function we wrote was very easy, but remember, this is a standard PHP function, so you can write whatever you want here. You can do very complex validations. You can read from the database, you can check some data online, whatever you need. For example, let's say you have an order form where the user needs to specify a quantity. Before accepting the order, you want to check if for that product you have enough stocks in your warehouse. Easy. In your custom validation function, you can do a query in your database using two values: the quantity the user requests and the product selected, which is, of course, will be in the form as well. And you check your stocks. If it is enough, you return true. Otherwise, you return false. One thing I strongly suggest you, if you have very specific needs in terms of text patterns, is to learn at least something about regular expressions. Regular expressions can be intimidating, but they are extremely powerful. They allow you to define very complex validation rules. I will leave a link to a good regular expression tutorial in the description of this video. Okay, let's talk about custom formatting functions now. As we said for validation, DaDaBIK provides some general formatting rules that depend on the DaDaBIK field type you choose. For example, an email field type will be displayed in the results grid and in the details page as a mail to link, as you can see. Even in this case, if you need something very specific, you can use a custom function. I will show you a very simple example. For example, let's take again the code product field, and let's say we want to display it in bold. Again, we create a function, we call it DaDaBIK format code product, and this function is called every time a product code needs to be displayed. The function accepts in input the variable value, which is the value of the field, and needs to return the value formatted as we need. In this case, what I did using string concatenation was to surround the value by the HTML tags b and close b. Which make a text bold, basically. Again, we need to tell DaDaBIK to use this function. So form configurator, custom formatting function, DaDaBIK format code product. Let's test it, and alright, the text is now bold. Okay? Alright. So, let's try with a slightly more complicated example. Well, not complicated, just a little bit more creative. Let's say this product code is in fact an Amazon product code, and we want to display a link to the corresponding Amazon product page. Okay? Well, it's very easy. Consider that the Amazon product page URLs follow this syntax. So this is the function I wrote. It's very simple. It's a simple HTML tag, and the URL is amazon.com/db plus $value, which is the actual product code. Let's use a real Amazon product code, and let's see. All right, a beautiful Korg drum machine. And it would be a wonderful birthday present for me, by the way. I'm just saying. All right, so very last thing I want to mention about custom formatting functions. As you can see, we also have another parameter here, custom CSV formatting function. What does it mean? As you probably know, DaDaBIK allows to easily export your data in comma-separated value format. For example, from here, I click on Export to CSV, and DaDaBIK creates a CSV version of the customer's data. Well, probably the way you want to format your data on a web page is different with respect to the CSV, which is just text, basically. So you can leave this empty if you don't need to apply any particular formatting. Most of the time it will be empty, actually. But you can also use the same function you used for custom formatting function, or a completely different function. Okay, last thing I want to discuss is custom required functions. You know that from the form configurator you can set a field as required, right? It's very easy. But sometimes, not very often, but sometimes it happens, you don't know in advance if a field is required. A typical example is a field that is required only if the user selected a particular option in the form. For example, in the customer's form, if for country the user selected United States, then the field state is required, otherwise it's not. Again, let's see how the custom function looks like. The function returns true when the field is required, false if it is not. Again, we have the associative array $parameters in input containing all the form values. So if $parameters country customer is equals to USA, then state customer is required, otherwise it is not. Of course, we need to tell DaDaBIK to use this function for that field. So again, form configurator, and we type DaDaBIK required state customer here. Let's test it, and as you can see, if I choose USA, the state field becomes required. Alright, that's it, so see you next time. Ciao!